In 2000, he sailed round the globe on the world's toughest yacht race. He battled hurricanes, icebergs, and 100-foot waves, and he went back for more. In 2014, he did it all again, but this time with a very different crew. His crew were his children and his wife, aged 2, 7, 9, and I'm not allowed to say. He's built many teams, but this was by far the toughest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome round-the-world sailor, team building and leadership expert, and officially the best dad in the world, Caspar Craven.
That's you.
Thank you. How would you lead and build a team consisting of your wife and 3 young children, aged just 9, 7, and 2, to sail through the toughest oceans in the world? That's probably the idea of hell for most people. What I'd like to share with you today is what I've learned about leadership and building a winning team, and give you 8 specific things that you can take away and use both in your businesses and in your day-to-day lives. As you've heard, I've built multiple businesses from scratch, and I sold one for a 7-figure sum whilst we were sailing the Pacific Ocean. I've built teams not just in business, but in the world of adventure, to sail twice around the world. The first time on the world's toughest yacht race, and the second time, as you just saw, with my wife and young family. So what I'd like to share with you is all about the power of building on your team's strengths and training your team to focus on what is right rather than what is wrong. Because we all know that both in business and in life, things will go wrong. So I want to give you the tools to deal with any adversity. One of the secrets involves defining your values and then truly living out those values when the going gets tough. We took corporate values and we adapted them into our family values. And every single day we talked about them, and we talked about what was right rather than what was wrong. And the time came when those values literally saved the lives of me and my family. I'll share the story with you a little bit later on. So what I'd like to do is to invite you to come on a journey with me, a journey around the world. So what I'd like to do is to break this up into 8 steps, starting with a seed of an idea in 2009 to us successfully circumnavigating around the world in 2016. And I'd like to pull out the lessons as we go along. So hands up. Who here is up for a journey around the world today? I'm pleased you said that. Thank you. Okay. So the first step is all about setting a clear direction. So I want to take you back to 2009, and everything starts with an idea. We've heard today about how the world is changing and different ideas. I believe the time right now is a time of ideas, a time to make things happen, a time of change. It was Napoleon who said, "Imagination rules the world." And he was so true, because an idea created in your imagination is where everything starts. And that's how I believe we're going to tackle many of the challenges we face in the world today. So what was our idea? I'd like you to picture a summer's day, sitting outside, having a picnic. The date was the 13th of June, 2009, and it was my sister's 40th birthday party. And we were sitting outside, and the sun was shining, and the wine was flowing. And my brother-in-law told us about this family who sailed around the world, and then went on to say what a ridiculous idea it was. That was the seed of an idea that caught our imagination. Actually, it caught my wife's imagination first. Meet my wife, Nicola. She's sitting here at our kitchen table at home, and over the next 6 months, we started talking about what we wanted to do and how we wanted life to be different. You can see on the kitchen table there a map of the world and some pieces of paper. And pretty much every weekend, we said, what do we want for our lives, for our children? And we charted out a route around the world. We literally drew on pencil on the map, and we had sheets of paper, and we created a vision statement saying, what was it that we wanted to do? This is the actual vision statement. We spent 6 months creating this, and then we put this on the kitchen wall. And we told every single person that we knew what we were planning to do. Now, what was interesting is this vision statement, it had a date on it. It has a certain amount of money that we needed to create in order to make it happen. We talked about what we were going to do and what we were going to do afterwards. So that was the seed of the idea. Let me introduce you to the rest of my team. Back then, my daughter Bluebell, she was 4, and my son Columbus, he was 2. Now, when we first told everybody about our idea to sail around the world, what do you think they did? Every single person laughed. And they told us it was utterly, utterly ridiculous. In fact, when we looked at it, there weren't many things that we had in our favor. The one big thing we had was that I'd sailed around the world before. This is me on my boat. We were leaving Cape Town here. I was actually on the orange boat, and we were leading the race coming out of Cape Town. So that was the one thing that we had. I'd sailed around the world before. What we didn't have in our favor were all these reasons here. And as we told people about the reason why we wanted to do this, everyone was kind enough to point out why we shouldn't do it. The first thing, we didn't have the money, not even close. Back then, I had a small consultancy business that I was running in London. We had sales of about 400,000 euros. We were losing money, and the thought of buying a boat and sailing around the world was utterly, utterly ridiculous. So you can understand why people laughed at us. The second thing, my wife Nicola. At this point, she'd been sailing on a boat just twice, and both times she got seasick. There's lots of other reasons there, but perhaps the other big reason is that we didn't have a boat. So this is the dock where we should have had a boat. But back in 2009, what we did have was this. We had a committed decision. We had time, and we had energy. And I truly believe with those raw ingredients, you can make anything happen. And, you know, what is a committed decision? Well, we all make decisions every single day, but how many of them are true committed decisions where you say, I'm going to make this happen, come hell or high water? And I believe it's that intent that sits behind things that's really, really important. The question I always ask is, in your businesses, do you have a clear vision of where you're going? We had our vision statement on the wall, and we had our purpose, our mission, our reason for doing it. We spent months talking about why was this so important to us. And it distilled down to some very simple words, that we wanted to create magical, life-changing experiences for us and our children. Those words sound really light, but they were the underpinning force of why we were doing it all. And there would become many dark days on our journey to get there, when nothing was working, and it was that underlying purpose that got us up and kept us going because we were going to make it happen. So, in your business, do you have a clear mission? Do you have a clear purpose about where you're going? So, the first step in making anything happen in your business, in your life, is taking that idea, talking about it, getting really clear on where you want to go, and knowing why it's important, that purpose. Because when things get difficult, if you haven't got a strong reason why, you'll give up. It's just the way it works when things get difficult, if you haven't got that compelling reason. Okay, step 2. This is all about creating a culture of we, not me. How do you work together as a team? So we're now in the time period of 2009 to 2012. So we're just starting our journey now of trying to make this happen. And I want to talk to you about my business. This is my business partner, Ed. He's sitting there in our offices in southwest London. And you're probably looking at that picture saying, why is he wearing the yellow headphones? The actual reason is it was to shut the noise out so he could do some work. But it's also quite powerful as a metaphor. Because in our business, I wasn't listening to him, he wasn't listening to me, and neither of us were really listening to the business and the messages that it was telling us. So we went through that 3-year period, 2009 to 2012, and I was changing things in the business, but our numbers didn't change one little bit. And we had this huge target that we had to achieve to get the money together, and nothing was working. It was Einstein who said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing but expecting a different result. We realized we had to do something very, very different. What was it? I decided to go and immerse myself in learning. And I realized that although I trained as a chartered accountant, I trained as an economist, I had 5 years as an investment banker, as a director, I came to realize that I knew next to nothing about how to truly grow a business and go and make money. So I went back and I started learning how to grow a business. And I remember in the Christmas of 2011, I was immersing myself in ideas, and I had fireworks going off in my brain with all these different ideas. I was alive with ideas because I'd immersed myself in finding the very best people in the world and saying, what have you done to grow your businesses, and learning from them. I came back at the start of the next year, and I was just so energized with ideas that I came back in like a tornado. And in the first 3 months of that year, I was hiring staff, I was launching new products, I recorded 200 videos, and I was just doing all these different things. And the metaphor that I have for it is that I was just charging through the business, and I was just making all these things happen. But what happened then was my business partner turned around to me, and he said, Caspar, you're being a nightmare. He said, if you don't change what you're doing, everybody, including me, is going to leave the business. Just imagine that. There's something you really, really want to achieve. You've set your heart on achieving this goal, and your business is turning around and saying, we don't want to work with you anymore. What do? I realized I was pretty isolated at that point, but I also realized I had to go back and learn. I'd done something, I got a result, it just wasn't the result that I wanted, so I needed to change something. So I went and found a coach, and I started working with her about how to really, truly build a team. And she said some words to me that have stuck very, very deeply inside me. And it's this: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I've been trying to do it all on my own. And if you want to achieve a big goal, you can't do it on your own. You've got to harness the talents and the expertise of the people around you. That was the light bulb moment that went off for me. We did a lot of work in the business together on values. Now, I used to work in the corporate world, and I remember thinking values were just a whole bunch of nonsense. And we talk about them for 2 hours a year, and then we forget about them, and then we do it again next year. And I was just like, I just roll my eyes and think, I haven't got the time for this. I've got more important things to do. I came to realize, though, that values are the core building block of how you achieve anything together. Because values define your behaviors. How do you work together? Behaviors define your actions, and actions define your outcomes. They literally are the core building block. So this picture behind me here, what is this? In our business, we spent 3 months defining what our values were, and we captured it in this picture, the picture of the lion. And this picture sat in the middle of the office where every single person could see it. So we talked about it, but not just that. Every single week, I would hold values prizes in the business, and I would celebrate what was right. And I would pick out 2 different people. I would describe a behavior that I had seen someone do, and I would give out chocolate bars as rewards. And what I was doing, I was ingraining the good behaviors. It's the antidote to what our brains are hardwired to do. How many people do you know who start a sentence with, the problem is? You know the saying, seek and ye shall find? If all you think about and all you look for is problems, what are you going to find more of? More problems. This is the reverse of that. It's saying what's right. It's building in your team. It's building on your strengths. Smiles and energy started to resonate through the business. The next quarter, this is me taking my team to Amsterdam. We'd absolutely smashed our quarterly targets. And over the next 12 months, the business grew faster than it had ever grown before, and we made more profit than we made in the previous 6 years in total. It's all because we were getting the culture and the behaviors right and building on people rather than me saying, I know what's right. Now, at the same time, I was now starting to think about how would I prepare 3 small children, or 2 small children at this stage, to go around the world. Because you know that you're going to be at some point, and you're going to be in the middle of the ocean, a pretty drastic escape room from what we were talking about earlier, and someone's going to turn around and say, are we nearly there yet? And when the answer is no, it's 3,000 miles and 3 more weeks at sea, if you haven't got a good strategy or a good answer, you're in trouble. So what did we do? I decided that we were going to do exactly what we'd done in the business, but apply that at home. So over several weeks, we sat down with the children and we defined our values. And here we are in our kitchen. You can see the map of the world on the wall there and our vision statements. And we crafted our values. This is actually the final picture here. So our values were things like love, laugh, action, understanding, and go prepared. And we talked with the children about what is it that we do when we display this value at its very best. So again, we were ingraining the good values. We were creating muscle for what's good and what's right. So just putting this step together here, this is all about my journey to understand how do you build a team. And it's all about that we, not me. Do you want to go far or do you want to go fast? How are you acting in your businesses? Are you doing things on your own, or are you engaging the other people to come on the journey with you? The other thing here that's super important is what was driving me before was my ego. And we adopted a mantra in the business. It doesn't matter who is right. It only matters what is right. So we took egos out of it, and we were just focusing purely on what's the right outcome for the business. Okay. Step 3. This is all about developing a winning mindset. We've still got a lot to do to make things happen. In our timeline, we're now in 2012 to 2014. In 2012, we had our 3rd child, Willow. And everyone at this point said, you're not going sailing now, are you? And it's like, no, we've made a decision, we're going sailing, and this is going to happen. The business was starting to grow, and it was fantastic. All the right signs were happening. But there was still a huge gap between where we were and where we needed to be. And as anyone in business knows, there's a great deal of difference between having a business that's growing and realizing money to be able to take out of it to go and buy a boat and all those sorts of things. So we realized that we needed plan B. Now, several years earlier, I'd started an online marketing site, and I had been singularly unsuccessful in making money in that business. But we looked at all the different resources we had, and we looked at that business again, and we said, why don't we go and learn from people who are doing really, really well in this sector and learn what they're doing? So that's what we did. We went and found the people who were doing incredibly well. We said, can we spend some time with you? Can we learn from you? They very graciously said yes. And my wife got involved in the business because I was full-time running my other business, and we took one of our online marketing sites. In the space of a few months, we turned it round so that it was making about €2,500 a year in profit. We then said, well, why don't we scale this? So then we built 13 of those sites. So we're now starting to make some more money. And then we said, well, hang on a second. Here's where we need to be. Here's where we are. We need to create 500 of these sites. So in the space of 3 months, we created 500 online marketing sites. It was one of those things that if you want to make something happen, you're going to find a way. And we went all in on that. We immersed ourselves in learning. I would go to conferences 4 times a year, and I'd seek out the very best people. I would immerse myself in learning. I stopped reading newspapers, and I would just read high-quality business books from people who'd done what I wanted to do before. We looked at how do we increase our energy. We got a fitness trainer. We stopped drinking alcohol. We reduced the amount of sugar we were eating, and saying, how can we condition ourselves so that we're going to make this happen? And of course, as well, we had to start thinking not just about the money, but how do we get the family ready for sailing? So this is us in the Greek islands, and that's Willow, baby Willow there. She was 3 months old, just starting to get used to being on the water. We had a huge amount to think about. We had to think about diesel engines, reading the weather, potty training, all these sorts of things, getting everything ready to go and sail around the world. We went on sea survival courses, So we're climbing in and out of life rafts should the boat sink and the worst happens. A big concern was medical. What happens if somebody is sick? My wife and I took the decision that we were both going to train to become ship's doctors. So that's my wife, Nicola, practicing sewing up wounds together there. She looks very happy there. I'm not quite sure why. But we still didn't have a boat. And at this point, everybody said, "You're not going, are you?" And it's like, no, we're going. We're going to find a way. When you've got loads of things going on, what do? You go and run the London Marathon, of course. So in April 2014, so this is just 4 months before our departure date, I run the London Marathon. I raise about €6,000 for a children's charity. And I completed it. But you might notice in that picture there, with my medal, I'm not standing up very straight. I'll come back to that in a moment. The following month, we finally bought our boats. We've been looking at the boats for several years now. This is her. Her name's Aretha. She's an Oyster 53. And she instantly became the 6th member of our family and was a key part of what we were going to do. And everybody was like, "You're going to do this, aren't you?" And it's like, "Yes, we're going to do this." So we had to start getting her ready. So my friend Paul here, we're putting netting on so the children aren't going to fall through the netting and thinking everything through. What do we need to do to be safe? And we take her out for a test sail. So we sail along the English Channel. Now, the boats performed magnificently. I, on the other hand, did not. Remember this wonky picture here? We were on the south coast and my back went. I couldn't walk. And my crew literally had to carry me. I was with 3 guys, 3 friends of mine, and they literally had to carry me back to the boat. We managed to get back home. I went to go and see my doctor, who referred me to a surgeon, Mr. Mendoza. And I went and had all the tests and everything. And basically said, "Look, you've got a problem at the base of your spine." And he said, "Look, you've got 2 choices. Either it might resolve itself, or you can have surgery to correct it." But remember, by now, we're now in June 2014. Our departure date was the 1st of August. So we're getting pretty close. What do you do? What would you do in that situation? Here's what I come back to. If there's something that you really, really want, you'll either find a way or you'll find an excuse. There's nothing else in between. Those are the 2 extremes. So this is the view from my hospital window on the 15th of July 2014. I had 3 hours worth of surgery correcting the base of my spine. The operation was a success, and I had to recuperate for about 6 weeks, so we delayed our departure by a few weeks to enable me to be ready to go for it. But there was nothing that was going to stop us making this happen. So, before I go into a little bit of sailing, let me just share a little bit more. So, the whole thing about developing the winning mindset, the key to us turning things around was continuous learning, finding the very best people, asking them questions, being humble, and just taking on board things and then putting those ideas into place. Relentless action, just going. You go until you find a result. If that doesn't work, you try something else. If that doesn't work, you try something else. You keep going. Okay, step 4. Follow the 80-20 principle. It's now August 2014, and because of my back, we decide to change our plans in 3 ways. The first thing is we delay our departure by 3 weeks, so that I can actually start to function again. For the first passage going across the Bay of Biscay down to Spain, we decide to leave the baby, Willow, she's 2 now, at home with my wife's parents. And we take on board 2 friends with us, Ian, a very good friend of mine, and my brother Max, so they can actually pull on the ropes and do things. So we're a little bit flexible, and we get underway. And I've got a little bit of video footage here. It's actually from the day that we left, and you can see us leaving. But what you'll also see in there is a number of things that didn't go quite right, and I'll talk about that in a second. brother Max putting the sails up, because I can't do that at the moment. As you can see, a lot of things broke there. So, as you saw, lots of things broke. Here's the lesson. Don't wait for perfect. There would have been loads of other things that we could have done to be perfect and to get everything ready until we'd gone. We could have made sure the toilets were working and everything was in pristine condition. But if we'd waited for perfect, we would never, ever have left. And here's what we did. We said, what are the big things we've got to make certain of? 1, have we got a safe boat? Yes. 2, have we got a good crew who are capable of figuring out whatever it is that's going to come up? Yes. Good enough. We're going. And you have to trust yourself at times. And I think the lesson, hearing the things this morning, there is so much change that's going on in the world. There's so much uncertainty that if we wait for perfect and wait until we know all the answers, the world will have moved on. I think it's the highest skill set that we need right now, is to be able to make decisions in the face of uncertainty. And for me, the key thing is, what are the big things that make all the difference? Focus on those, get them in place, and then get going. And trust yourself, you'll figure it out as you go along. So, let me give you a little bit of insight into our routes. So, we leave the UK, and we're sailing down to the Canary Islands. And that's the first little stretch. As you can see, there's a whole world of ocean still to be sailed after that. But the key thing here is following the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle. There are some things that are significantly more important than others. So figure out what those things are in your business, in your world. What are the 1 or 2 big things that are going to make all the difference? Don't wait for perfect. Get on with them and find a way. And secondly, trust yourself to be able to figure things out as you go along. And the lesson for us there is that we had to be flexible. We were still going to make this plan happen. We just had to tweak our plan slightly because of my back, but it was still going to happen. Okay, step 5, building people. A happy team is a fast team. We're now ready to cross our first big ocean. It's November 2014, and it's the Atlantic we're going to sail next. So this is going to be our route here, going from the Canary Islands across to the Caribbean. Everyone always asks me, how much food do you need to cross an ocean? That's about half the amount of food that you need. We're now starting to do regular things on the boat. This is my wife, Nicola. Every day we check the rigging, the wires going up the mast to make sure everything was safe. And we started to get everybody involved in what was going on. So this is the kids on board, and they loved getting involved in all the different things on the boat. So here they are doing cooking. My son, Columbus, learning how to use a sextant so we can work out where in the world we are. It's a wonderful world of learning once you start to learn about angles and measurements and solar bodies and things like that. Willow loved going and hoovering around the boat. And the important thing with all of this is that we were focusing on what everybody brought to the party. And we were talking about what was right rather than what was wrong. So our values, every single day, we would do values prizes. And the children would get stickers for things they'd done well. Rather than saying, don't do that, we'd say, I really like what you did there. And consistently, every day, we were talking about that. And what was brilliant is that everyone started to find their roles on the boat. So Columbus loved sailing the boat with me. Bluebell was brilliant downstairs, getting involved in the schooling, helping with her younger sister, involved in the cooking. Willow loved clearing up. And everyone, we started to work together as a team. Now, when we left the Canary Islands, we were actually part of a rally, so 200 other boats were around us. When I say around us, you don't see them because it's a huge ocean. But we started off at the back of the fleet. And as we started to work our way across the Atlantic, as a boat, we started to get fast because we were starting to work well together as a team. And it was all because of this, of noticing the strengths in your team. Every person has a different skill set, something different they bring to the party. Find out what that is, celebrate it, and encourage more of it. So this is the screenshot that we would see every day. We'd look at how far it was to go until we got to the Canary Islands. So at this point here, we had 993 miles to go, and we were working our way up. So we're now in the top third of the fleet because we're getting faster. And finally, after 18 days, this is us crossing our first ocean, sailing into St. Lucia. And that was us celebrating the team. And it's like, yes! You know, after all those reasons why it shouldn't have happened, we conquered that first ocean. But here's the thing. When I sailed around the world before on the BTE Global Challenge, my skipper then had a saying that a fast team is a happy team. And she thought that if everybody was going fast, if the boat was going fast, then everybody would be happy and it would all be working well. And I believe in life and in business, it's completely the opposite way around. If you find what you love doing, if you build on what people's strengths are and get people in the right roles, get people happy doing what they're doing, then they'll go fast. So my belief is that a happy team is a fast team, and you do that by focusing on the strengths. You find the right roles for each person inside the business. Okay, step 6, living your values. It's February 2015. We're about to cross the Pacific. It's the biggest ocean in the world, 2.5 times the size of the next largest ocean. This is going to be our route through it here, all the way across to Australia. It's going to take 6 months to sail it. You start off going through the Panama Canal, so you go squeezed in. We have this huge, great big ship behind us. And by now, everyone is getting pretty good on the boat. So Columbus is now brilliant at sailing the boat. Here he is steering. Willow loves spotting land, shouting out "land ho" as we start to see the land in front of us. And there's lots of magical times, so swimming with turtles in the Galapagos Islands, and that's Columbus hanging onto the back of a 4.5-meter nurse shark. Oh, just to close, one other thing. Do you remember my business that I mentioned before? The first business that I had? So this is us in Bora Bora on the 1st of May 2015. And we're celebrating. What are we celebrating? So the business that I had, my first business, it was actually a data analytics company. Because of the work we'd done, putting the right culture, the right values in place, we actually left with an amazing team of people. We put together a brilliant team of people to run that business. And as we were sailing across the Atlantic, 2 global corporates came and said they'd like to buy the business from us. We selected a preferred party in the Caribbean, and as we sailed the Pacific, we were negotiating the sale and purchase agreements. So I'd be on the phone in the middle of the night to the lawyers on the other side, and the most expensive phone calls I've ever had in my life. But finally, we closed the deal and sold it for a 7-figure sum whilst we were actually sailing across the Pacific Ocean. I don't know if that's the first time I've done that before, but anyway, it was cool. So, in amongst all of this, things were about to go wrong. Now, you know that in business, in life, whatever it is, things are going to go wrong at some point. The question is, what do you do when that happens? So we were deep in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We were 500 miles from the nearest piece of land, and we had complete power failure. What does power failure mean on a boat? It means no navigation systems to know where you are. It means no autopilot to steer the boat, no cooker, no water pumps, no winches, no toilets, nothing. You're completely isolated and on your own in one of the most remote parts of the world. What do you do in that situation? Of course, when things go wrong, you always have the worst weather. I've only got one photo from this time. It's this picture here. The dots you can see are the driving rain. We had 40-foot waves breaking over the boat. We had huge seas. And it was one of those situations. You say, what do you do? Now, in that situation, do you turn on each other and start to blame someone and say, it's your fault, why didn't you do this? What do you do? Here's what we did. Remember our values? The things we've been talking about every single day, we've been ingraining them like muscles. We've been building the strength by focusing on what was right rather than what was wrong. We've been making these the most natural things that we could do. One of our values was the word laugh. So we decided to find the humor in the situation. So we told the children that we don't have toilets anymore, and we introduced them to the new toilet, the bucket. Within minutes, they were crying with laughter as they lined up on deck to go to the toilet and the bucket and chuck it over the side. It's called the bucket and chuck it system. Over the next 4 days, my wife and I, we hand-steered the boat. We'd steer for half an hour at a time each. The children would be downstairs. They would bring us up food and water on deck. And we truly worked together as a team. There was no blame. There was no anger. There was love. There was humor. There was compassion. And it was one of our proudest moments working together as a team because very simply, we lived our values. After 4 days, we got to the island of Niue, and we arrived. And yes, we got through, but we hadn't just survived, we'd thrived, because it had just been a great time working together as a team. We'd taken on adversity and dealt with it. One of the things that I always teach my children is this very simple formula here. E plus R equals O, where E is the event that something happens to you. You lose your job. You have power failure in the middle of the ocean. You lose a key client. Something happens to you. R is your reaction. What do you do as a result of that event? And O is the outcome. What happens as a result of it all? And it's all about looking at your reaction. You can't control the event. The event happens. So what do you do in that moment? And that's what I always get my kids to think about. How would you react? How would you deal with things? Is your team in your business equipped to deal with adversity? Would you thrive? How would you deal with a situation like that? So living your values. For me, this is all about working out what's important to you and ingraining that. Much as we did in the business, talking about it every week, giving out chocolate bars, as we did on the boat, giving out stickers, focusing on what's right rather than what's wrong. It goes against our natural instincts. We're not trained that way. And remembering, things will go wrong. And in that moment, it's your reaction of how you deal with things that's going to dictate the outcome. Okay, step 7, get resourceful. We're now September 2015, and we're about to cross the Indian Ocean. This is our route here, over the top of Australia, and all the way to South Africa. Everybody always asks me, by the way, what's the most beautiful island in the world? It's this one here. It's called Cocos Keeling. It's impossible to get to. Well, it's not possible because we sailed there, but it's hard to get to, but it's absolutely magical. Okay. Remember I mentioned about Nicola, my wife, doing these regular rigging checks? So we were super vigilant in terms of safety and making sure everything was as safe as it could be. And we'd spent a huge amount of time getting spares and making sure we had everything that we could think about. But no matter what you do to prepare, there's always going to be something that catches you out, isn't there? So we had our second scary moment. And we're south of Madagascar here, 800 miles from South Africa. And we start to have a problem with our rigging. So remember, our rigging wires are the things that hold the mast up. And we had a situation where 3 of those rigging wires broke. If a 4th rigging wire had gone, the mast would have fallen down, and basically we wouldn't be able to sail the boat, which is quite a scary prospect, because that's how you get around on a boat. And we had to figure out again, what is it that we would do? How do we figure out how to get around that? So the first thing was, we looked at what we had, and we started to make repairs based on what we had on the boat. So you can see the red ropes here. We're starting to tie this around the rigging to try and make sure it doesn't fall over. We went up the mast, and we tied extra lines on to bring it back down to the deck. But it still wasn't enough. We had some friends who were about 50 miles away, and we called them up on the radio, because there was a key piece of equipment that we were missing, that we didn't have. It's these little bolts here, D-rings. And they came alongside us in the middle of the ocean, and they transferred the equipment to us, which is what we needed to be able to get the rigging safe and secure again. We carried on and we sailed to South Africa. My mum was so worried about us, she flew out to come and meet us. But look, here's the lesson from all of this. A boat, much like a business, is you've got what you've got. We could have said when we were out there, you know what, we need this and we haven't got this, and thrown our hands in the air. Back in my business, I remember saying, you know, wouldn't it be great if only we had more money, more people, more clients? But the thing is, in life, you've got what you've got. It's not the resources that you have, it's how resourceful you are. And you've got to figure out a way to use what it is that you've got. And I think resourcefulness is a muscle. It's a skill that you need to develop and train. Much as when we were getting the money together to go and make this happen, we had to figure this out because nobody else was going to come and fix it for us. We had to figure that situation out on our own. So as I say, it's not the resources you have, it's how resourceful you are. The final point there. It's okay to ask for help as well, because our friends 50 miles away, you know, they had what we needed. In your businesses, there'll be people that you know, there'll be resources all around you, and sometimes you just need to look at them through fresh eyes and ask for help. I did that when we were growing our business, and we had that failing business, and we turned that around. We found people who knew more than we did, and we just went and asked them. Okay, step 8, final step, celebration. We're now January 2016. We're going back across the Atlantic for a second time. Our routes from South Africa across to Brazil and then back up to the Caribbean. This was us here arriving in the Caribbean, and the 5 of us we had at this point actually circumnavigated. That was us crossing our outbound track. So it was like, yes, we've done this. We have finally celebrated. And what was great was that we celebrated. Clearly we celebrated the big things like that. But the only reason that we got there to be able to celebrate the big things was by celebrating the little victories along the way. And I remember in my business, this was really hard to do sometimes, to focus on those little things and celebrate them. It's only a small thing. Oh, well, let's just move on. But whenever we sailed a small leg, we would always do prizes and awards at the end of that. We'd make people feel special and tell people, again, what they were doing well. And we would enjoy time with the team. It was a major thing in turning my business around. And the people wanted to start to enjoy being with their team members. And the more you do that, the more people help each other. So it's all about celebrating those small things. So I'm conscious of time. I'm going to wrap this up. So I'm just going to go back through all the different lessons here. So the first one is all about setting that clear direction, engaging your team and getting clear on your purpose. Where are you going and why does it matter? Creating that culture of we, not me. Do you want to go far or do you want to go fast? If you want to go far, you've got to build the team of people around you, and you've got to celebrate what everybody is doing brilliantly. Develop the winning mindset. Do as much learning as you can. Learn from the smartest people that you can get access to and implement that stuff. Get into that massive action. Don't think everything has an equal impact. Find those 1 or 2 things that have the biggest impact. I was sharing a story earlier that someone told me that if you try and chase 2 rabbits, you won't catch either of them. What's the one big thing that you've got to go after? Go after the one big thing and don't try and do everything. Build people. A happy team is a fast team. Much as with my kids, they thrived when they were doing stuff they loved doing, and that turned us into a fast team. We were sailing fast. Living your values. My story there of when everything went wrong, and the thing that has saved us was building that muscle and ingraining those values. Get resourceful. It's not the resources that you have, it's your mindset. How can I use the resources that I've got? You've got what you've got. How can you use them in a better way, in a different way, in a smarter way? Ask for help. Find a different way to think about it. And finally, celebrate. Not just the big things, but the small things. Thank you very much.
Thank you.